Bob Woodward's book is going to be available for public purchase this week, and over the weekend he did his round of interviews with major news shows. There were a number of comments that he made about, or elaborations he made about portions of his book that have already made news that I think are important to kind of discuss on the show today. So let's go to the first video where Woodward talks specifically about Trump officials taking documents off his desk so Trump doesn't carry out disastrous policies.
People who work for him are worried that he will sign things or give orders that threaten the national security or the financial security of the country or the world.
Aides, including then Chief Economic Advisor Gary Cohn and White House Staff Secretary Rob Porter, literally stole documents like this one off the president's desk in the Oval Office.
So he wouldn't sign them because they realized that this would endanger the country.
How do they get away with that?
He doesn't remember. If it's not on his desk, if it's not immediately available for action, it goes away.
So the statement that he made about Trump forgetting was the relevant statement that I think a lot of people had questions about. How could the president, demand certain things and then not actually carry it out simply because someone took a paper off his desk or documents off his desk? And as Woodward says there, he just forgets.
Yeah, I mean, he's saying it politely. It's exactly what we told you on day one of this story. He's too stupid to realize and too incompetent to realize that they didn't execute his orders. So saying he doesn't remember, what does that mean? Does he have dementia? I guess that would be worse in a sense. But if he doesn't have dementia, when you tell people that work for you to do something and they don't do it and you don't notice, it's because you're incompetent. Now, look, and let me be fair, because running a large organization is not easy. So if it was a small thing, well, if you're president of the United States, you can get lost in the weeds. If it was something that's lower in the chain of command and you didn't hear about it, understandable. So I'm not trying to be unfair here, and it's a giant organization, the White House and the executive branch. But one of the orders he asked for was to kill Bashar al-Assad, the head of the Syrian government. Mm-hmm. That's not a thing you easily forget. It's not a thing down the chain of command. No, and the defense secretary told you, yes, sir, we'll carry it out right away, and Assad remains completely unkilled. And so that's saying that you forgot that is saying either, yes, you clearly have dementia, or you're just such an idiot that anybody can tell you, oh, yes, sir, of course, sir. Mm-hmm. And then you don't notice and you forget because you have no mind at all. That's the thing. The debate is whether he lost his mind or never had a mind to lose in the first place.
Right, so you hear all these debates throughout the press regarding why Trump reacted the way he did, which was no reaction at all when members of his own administration didn't carry out tasks that he told them to carry out. And so one of the debates was, or one of the people in these debates argued, well, people know that Trump is a hyperbolic kind of guy. He says things he doesn't mean, which is the reason why, he hasn't been angry that these things haven't been carried out. But I genuinely believe from the get-go that he just forgets because he's incompetent. And Woodward, based on the hundreds of interviews that he did, has reinforced that.
And he has no, as the op-ed writer from inside his administration said, he has no guiding principles. So it's easy, he's like, well, I wanted you to kill Assad today, but tomorrow I changed my mind. So what difference does it make? And as almost every person involved says, you just wait for him to change his mind. So just ignore his orders until either he forgets or changes all of his principles the very next day.
So this is the other part of it too. These are all those possibilities, but then as a guy who's never had to deal with any consequences in his life for destroying things and leaving a wake of devastation behind him, if they kill Assad or if they don't kill Assad, it doesn't matter because he doesn't know the consequences of doing either one. So if it happens, he's like, great, I told him to do that, cool. And if it doesn't happen, like, oh great, I told him to do it, but okay, I'm on to the next thing. He doesn't think things through enough for it to think, oh, it didn't get done, I wanted Assad dead because enter next sentence. That next sentence doesn't exist. So he's never had to deal with his consequences in his life. If you bankrupt a company, you're gonna never forget that. And you're never gonna go around telling everybody, I'm the best businessman in the world.
Yeah.
I've never done anything wrong. But normal people will think that. But if you've bankrupted several, and you keep moving on and they keep giving you another chance, why would you?
That's such a good point.
Yeah, see, out of all those excellent points JR just made, to me the most important one is the next sentence point, right? We kill Assad, and then, so I would think through, okay, how is Russia going to react? Because Russia is allies with Assad. What is Iran going to do in response? Another ally of Assad's. Is Hezbollah going to take action because Iran gives them orders to? Will that affect Israel? These are all the rational calculations you should make if you're a president of the United States. But for him, he doesn't understand the consequences of his actions, so he never thinks through the second, let alone the third or the fourth sentence. So when none of those actions flow, if I had made an order like that, I'd go, well, what happened? Did Hezbollah attack? Is our relationship with Russia okay? But since he has no mind at all and doesn't understand consequences, he said it and he just doesn't even notice it didn't happen. Come on, guys, this is the most obvious thing in the world. I don't care how much of a Trump fan you are. You know that ordering Assad's killing and then not having it carried out and you don't notice is a sign of an incredibly stupid person.
All right, so that was, just a small snippet of the interview with CBS. Woodward also talked about how the Pentagon first realized that Twitter could lead to World War III. Take a look.
He drafts a tweet saying we are going to pull out dependents from South Korea, family members of the 28,000 people there.
That tweet was never sent because of a back-channel message from North Korea that it would regard a pullout of dependents as a sign the US was preparing to attack.
At that moment, there was a sense of profound alarm in the Pentagon leadership that, my God, one tweet, and we have reliable information that the North Koreans are going to read this as an attack is imminent.
So a couple of things there, Anna. One is, I'm surprised, the biggest surprise to me out of all this is that anyone checks his tweets before they're sent. So I didn't know that happened. And maybe for special foreign policy tweets, they actually bothered to check them. Okay, but this is an excellent example, onto the more serious point, of the man who has no understanding of consequences. Well, I'm gonna say that I'm gonna pull those guys out. Wait, there might be consequences to that. How will the North Koreans react? What? Well, what's consequences? I have influenza, I never had any. So he went bankrupt 6 times. They were bailed out by mainly 2 people. One was his daddy, over and over again. By the way, this is all facts, you could read into it. They had to pay fines for his dad getting him money in ways that were not legal, and they had to admit it and pay fines for that, including just going and buying chips at his casino and then never using them. So all this illegal way of funneling Trump money because he's an idiot. And his daddy bailed him out all those times. Now, of course, the second daddy is Vladimir Putin. After he couldn't get a loan from anyone else, he wound up getting loans from Russian banks controlled by the oligarchs. So here's a guy who doesn't understand that, hey, I might accidentally start a war because that would require you to have a second thought in your head. And so one more thing about that, at a different point in the interview, Woodward said, let's hope to God we don't have a crisis. Now, when I read that by itself, I didn't quite understand what I mean, like crisis in the White House, we already have a crisis. No, when I read it in context and saw it in context, I understood what he meant. If we have something like the Cuban Missile Crisis,
oh my God,
where the president has to be sentient, cogent, and make world-changing decisions on the spot. Oh, God help us all. God help the whole world. Nobody knows what he's gonna do. Even Trump doesn't know what he's gonna do because he's erratic, he has no guiding principles, and he has no mind to speak of and doesn't understand the consequences of his actions. So yeah, we're playing with fire every minute that he's the president. If there is a world-changing crisis, by the way, he might accidentally do the right thing, but brace for impact.
Exactly.
Because he has no idea what he's gonna do.
That's the issue, that it's a wild card, that you don't know what you're gonna get with Trump. And every once in a while, even for us, he'll say something that sounds promising and then he'll immediately backtrack and do something disastrous. And it's because he doesn't have any guiding principles. You're right, Cenk. And when I think about him, I often think about George Bush, not because I think that they're very similar, but I remember when it came to George Bush, one of the biggest criticisms was that he had this unearned confidence. But now when you have Trump in office and you see his behavior, that's unearned confidence. The guy has absolutely no intellectual curiosity, doesn't have a real understanding of policy, both domestic or foreign, which is why he's treating the trade deals like a child, doesn't know or care about the consequences of the trade policies that he's putting out there. But more importantly, he's unwilling to listen to other people around him and get advice from them. He wants to carry out actions unilaterally, whereas Bush, for as horrible as he was, I mean, he was overly manipulated by outsiders or insiders within his administration. With Trump, he just wants to go at it because he thinks he's the best, he thinks he's the brightest, he thinks he's always right.
We had a poll early on in his administration, who was dumber, George Bush or Donald Trump? Because don't get romantic about George Bush, a very low IQ individual. But Bush clearly wins on being smarter because at least he has enough self-awareness and intellect to understand how stupid he is.
Yeah.
That's why he would ask it to a fault, ask people around him, hey, Dick Cheney, what should I do? Oh, invade Iraq? Okay, fine, right? Donald Trump doesn't even have the capacity to understand how maniacally stupid he is.
Right.
So to give you an example.
I actually have an example for you.
Go ahead.
Can I go to this example first because it's somewhat newsworthy? So Trump is freaking out over the Woodward book. It's obvious based on the number of tweets he's put out in regard to it. And so here's the tweet that stood out to me. He said, the Woodward book is a joke, just another assault against me in a barrage of assaults using now disproven unnamed and anonymous sources. Many have already come forward to say the quotes by them, like the book, are fiction. Dems can't stand losing. I'll write the real book. No, you won't. No, you won't. Like, he's not gonna write a book. He's not capable of writing. Maybe someone can ghostwrite a book for him, but like it gives you a sense of how much unearned confidence he has. He can't even craft a single tweet without making a mistake in it, but he's gonna write a book.
So he's got a number of books out. They were all ghostwritten.
Yes.
Of course, he doesn't have the intellectual capacity to write a book, not even close. In fact, almost all of his ghostwriters have now come out and said, God help us all, whatever you do, you gotta get him out. I spent time with him. Total idiot. Couldn't write a sentence, let alone a book, but forget that. They ghostwrite for a lot of people. They're like, no. If you're in the room with him, you understand he's a danger to everyone because he's a guy with no conscience, no intellect, and doesn't realize either. So the analogy I was gonna use, or metaphor I was gonna use is, Ann Richards once said about George W. Bush that he was born on third base and thought he hit a triple. Donald Trump was born on third base and thought he kicked a field goal. 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.